The contract said 9 months, 1 child, 0 emotion. Nobody told Dera Nwosu that the coldest man in Seoul would show up at her apartment at 2 a.m. because she hadn't answered his calls, or that she would open the door and feel something impossible stir in her chest. Nobody told Kang Min-ho that the woman carrying his child would carry something else too, the first real feeling he'd had in years. Welcome to Story World Besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Dera Nwosu never planned to become anyone's surrogate. She was 29, a nursing assistant in Atlanta, drowning under her late father's medical debt, when the agency called with an offer too specific to be random. A private client, Korean, extremely wealthy, willing to pay $250,000 for a gestational surrogacy, provided she relocated to Seoul for the duration. She almost said no 3 times. Then she thought about her mother's eviction notice sitting on the kitchen counter, and she said yes. She met him for the first time in a glass office 40 floors above the city. Kang Min-ho didn't stand when she walked in. He didn't smile. He simply looked up from his desk, dark eyes unreadable, and said, "You understand the terms. No relationship. No contact beyond medical necessity. This is a transaction." Dara lifted her chin. "Understood. I'm not here to be your friend, Mr. Kang. I'm here to do a job." Something flickered behind his eyes, gone before she could name it. The next day, the procedure was completed at a private clinic with more security than a bank vault. Dara signed 40 pages of legal documents. Min-ho signed his name without reading a single clause he'd already memorized. Neither of them said much. But as she left the clinic, she caught him watching her from the hallway, hands in his pockets, jaw tight, like a man trying to convince himself he felt nothing at all. A few weeks later, the pregnancy was confirmed. Min-ho received the call in the middle of a board meeting and excused himself without explanation. His assistant, Han Yi-yeol, had never seen him leave a meeting for anything. Min-ho stood alone in the elevator, staring at his own reflection, and felt his chest tighten in a way he didn't have a name for. He told himself it was relief. It was. That evening he arrived unannounced at the apartment he'd arranged for Dara, a sleek high-rise near Han River. She opened the door in an oversized sweatshirt, hair wrapped, startled to find him standing there. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No," he said. Then, after a pause that lasted too long, "I wanted to see that you were settling in." Dara studied him. "That's not a transaction thing to do." "No," he admitted quietly, "it is." He didn't come inside that night, but he came back the following week, and the week after that, always with some flimsy reason, prenatal vitamins, a doctor's report, updated paperwork. Dara stopped pretending she believed the excuses. She started making tea for 2. By the end of the first trimester, something had shifted between them that neither would name aloud. Min-ho began attending every appointment personally, standing rigid in waiting rooms full of soft pastel walls and baby photos. A man built for boardrooms trying to look like he belonged somewhere gentler. When the doctor first let them hear the heartbeat, fast and fluttering through the monitor, Min-ho's hand found the edge of the exam table and gripped it like the floor had tilted beneath him. Dara watched his face crumble just slightly, just enough. "You okay?" she whispered. "I've built companies worth billions," he said, voice rough. "Survived hostile takeovers, assassination attempts on my family's business, sleepless years clawing for control. Nothing prepared me for that sound." She reached over without thinking and touched his hand. He didn't pull away. The following month, a company gala forced them into the same room, dressed for a world neither of them had chosen together. Dara wore emerald green, her curves elegant in the fabric, and when she walked in on Min-ho's arm out of necessity, the press assumed conversation in the ballroom stalled. A junior executive named Robert Ainsley, American, charming, overconfident, cornered her near the bar. "So you're the mystery woman," he said, eyes dragging over her. "Min-ho kept you very hidden. Can't say I blame him." Dara stepped back politely. "I'm not his anything, Mr. Ainsley." "Could have fooled me," He reached for her arm. A hand closed over Ainsley's wrist before it landed. Min-ho's voice was low, lethal. "Don't touch her again." Ainsley paled, muttered an apology, and disappeared into the crowd. Min-ho didn't release her arm right away. "Are you all right?" "I had it handled," Dera said, though her pulse was racing for an entirely different reason now. "I know," he said. "I still couldn't stand there and watch." That night, driving her home, the silence between them was thick with something neither could deny anymore. A few weeks later, a storm rolled over Seoul, the kind that knocked out power grids and grounded flights. Min-ho arrived at Dera's apartment carrying takeout and candles, claiming the building's generator was more reliable than hers. She knew it was a lie. She let him stay anyway. They ate on the floor by candlelight, rain hammering the windows, and for the first time, Min-ho talked. About his father's death, about inheriting an empire at 26 with no one to teach him softness, about the loneliness that had calcified into control because control was the only thing that never abandoned him. "Why me?" Dera asked softly. "Out of every surrogate in the registry." "Your file was almost invisible," he admitted. "No family drama, no agenda, just a woman trying to save her mother's house." He looked at her, something raw in his expression. "I told myself I chose you because you were simple. I was wrong. You're the least simple thing that's ever happened to me." The air between them went taut. Dera's breath caught as he reached up, tucking a loose braid behind her ear, his palm lingering against her jaw. "Min-ho," she whispered, half warning, half invitation. "Tell me to stop," he murmured, forehead resting against hers, "and I will." She didn't tell him to stop. What followed was tender, unhurried, full of vulnerability neither had allowed themselves in years, the kind of closeness that needed no explicit words to convey its weight. When the storm finally quieted, so did the distance between them, replaced by something neither could take back. Morning came, and with it panic. Dera woke to find Min-ho already dressed, standing at the window, unreadable again, the wall back up. Old fear rose in her chest, the fear of every woman who had ever given a powerful man her heart only to watch him retreat behind glass. "This changes the contract," he said quietly, not looking at her. Her stomach dropped. "I know. I don't know how to undo what happened." "You don't have to undo it," she said, gathering her clothes, voice tight. "I'll finish the pregnancy. I'll hand over the baby, and then I'll go home like we agreed." "Dera." "Don't," she said, and left before he could see her cry. For the next 2 weeks, Dera kept her appointments through his assistant, refusing to see Min-ho directly. She told herself it was self-preservation. She told herself a man like that didn't fall in love with a surrogate. He panicked and pulled away, and she wouldn't be there to watch him do it a second time. Min-ho, meanwhile, was unraveling in his own quiet way. He canceled meetings. He stared at sonogram photos in his desk drawer instead of quarterly reports. Yi-yeol finally confronted him. "Sir, with respect, you've been insufferable for 2 weeks." "I made a mistake," Min-ho said. "Which one, falling for her or letting her walk away?" Min-ho didn't answer because he already knew. The following morning, Dera arrived home to find her apartment filled with white roses, her favorite, though she'd never told him that. She had told her diary that, months ago, in an idle, unguarded moment when he'd asked what flowers her mother used to grow. He'd remembered. On the counter sat a handwritten letter in careful, deliberate English, clearly rewritten more than once. "Dera," it began, "I have spent my life mistaking control for safety. You showed me they were never the same thing. I'm not asking you to forgive the way I left that morning. I'm asking for the chance to show you every day after that I am not a man who retreats from what he loves. I love you. I loved you before I let myself admit it, and I will keep loving you long after this pregnancy ends, whether or not you allow me to stay. But I am asking you to let me stay. Min-ho." She was still holding the letter, tears blurring the ink when the doorbell rang. He stood there in the hallway, not the untouchable CEO from the glass office, but a man stripped down to something honest. "I know I don't deserve an easy yes," he said, "but I couldn't let you believe, even for one more day, that what happened between us was something I regretted." "You left," she whispered. "I panicked," he corrected. "There's a difference, and I intend to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." By the end of the week, they were no longer avoiding each other. But peace never lasted long in Min-ho's world. A rival conglomerate, the Beak Group, had been circling his company for months, and when they learned about Dera, an unmarried American carrying the Kang heir, they saw an opportunity. A tabloid story broke overnight. Kang Min-ho's secret surrogate scandal, painting Dera as a gold-digging outsider trying to trap Seoul's most eligible bachelor. Dera's phone exploded with messages. Reporters camped outside her building. And worse, her surrogacy agency, pressured by anonymous threats, tried to have her removed from the case entirely, citing a manufactured contract violation. Min-ho's response was immediate and merciless. He called an emergency press conference himself, something his board begged him not to do. "I will address this once," he told the cameras, voice steady, eyes cold as steel. "Dera Nwosu is not a scandal. She is the mother of my child and the woman I intend to marry. Anyone who continues to target her will be dealt with by my legal team and personally by me. That is not a threat. It is a promise." The room went silent. Somewhere across the city, Dera watched the broadcast with her hand pressed to her mouth, sobbing into an empty apartment that suddenly didn't feel so empty anymore. He didn't just say it publicly, he backed it up privately, tracing the leak to a Beak Group executive and burying the man's career in a single quiet phone call. The agency reinstated Dera within the hour, formal apology attached. That evening, Min-ho found her on the rooftop of his building. The one place she'd once told him made her feel closest to home. "You didn't have to say all that on camera," she said as he approached. "Yes," he said simply, "I did. The world needed to hear it as much as you did." He knelt then, not for a proposal yet, but to speak to her stomach, now visibly rounded beneath her coat. "You're going to grow up knowing exactly how loved your mother is," he told the child. "Both of you." Dera's hand found his shoulder, and for the first time since the storm, she let herself believe this was real. The final months of the pregnancy passed in a blur of doctor's visits, nursery preparations, and quiet dinners that no longer required excuses. Min-ho moved Dera into his penthouse, not as an arrangement, but as a partner. He learned to cook badly and laugh about it. He held her feet when they ached. He fought his own board for maternity provisions that had never existed in Kang Group's history, insisting they exist now for her and for every woman after her. On a golden evening in early spring, he took her to the rooftop garden he'd had built in secret over 3 months, filled with white roses and fairy lights strung between cherry blossom branches. Dera pressed a hand to her swollen belly, breathless at the sight. "Min-ho, what is this?" He dropped to one knee, hands trembling for the first time she'd ever seen. "I have controlled every part of my life since I was 26 years old," he said. "Every contract, every merger, every decision. But I could not control the moment I fell in love with you, and I have never been more grateful to lose control of anything." He opened a small box, a ring simple and elegant, nothing like the ostentatious jewels his world usually demanded. "Dera Nwosu, will you marry me?" Not because of a contract, not because of the baby, because I cannot imagine one more day of my life without you in it. Dera was crying before she could answer, nodding through her tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Min-ho." He rose and kissed her slowly, carefully, like she was something he intended to cherish for the rest of his life, because he did. 3 weeks later, their daughter arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, healthy and loud, and utterly unbothered by the empire waiting outside the hospital room. They named her Amara Sua Kang, a name stitched from 2 continents and one impossible love story. Min-ho held his daughter for the first time and wept without shame, The coldest man in Seoul undone completely by 6 pounds of new life. They married that autumn in a small ceremony overlooking the same river his penthouse faced, Dera's mother in the front row, finally free of debt and worry, Yeol standing as best man with a smile he couldn't wipe off his face. Dera wore ivory, not white, curvy and radiant, and when she walked toward Min-ho, he forgot every boardroom he'd ever ruled, every empire he'd ever built. None of it compared to this. One decision, he murmured against her ear as they danced beneath string lights, turned my entire life upside down. Best decision I ever made. Which one? She teased, signing the contract or breaking it. Falling for you, he said. Everything after that was just me finally catching up. And under a Seoul sky glittering with stars, the girl who once carried his child for a stranger's price became the woman who carried his heart for the rest of his life. If this story moved you tonight, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Story World. Drop a comment below and tell us, did Min-ho earn his second chance, or did Dera forgive him too easily? We read every single comment. See you in the next story.